The main problem that you're going to face when working with AI is its lack of a detailed memory. For example, hey Claude, can you remind me what we worked on yesterday? In this video, I'm going to show you how to fix the memory problem with LLMs by building your own comprehensive memory system using Obsidian and Claude code so that when you interact with Claude, it has full context and memory about who you are, who your firm is, what you do, what cases you're working on, exactly what you did yesterday, what other people have done throughout the firm. So you can ground Claude in knowledge about your firm and your business and also memory about the things that have happened recently. If you don't know who I am, my name is Masai and I work directly with boutique law firms to help them build AI automations and integrate AI in their day-to-day operations. So let's get right into this video. So we have a couple of problems here. We have two main problems. Basically, we have the data problem in a law firm. If you're running a law firm, you probably have data across a variety of different systems. So you're going to have data in OneDrive, SharePoint, or Google Drive if you use Google Drive. You have transcripts and client calls that you may or may not be capturing. You probably have a case management system, a document management system, accounting software, your social media platforms. You may have a marketing department, an intake department. So we have data already generally in most law firms is scattered across a lot of different places and unorganized. Then the other problem we have is the AI problem, which is that AI does not have persistent memory out of the box. You have to basically build the memory for it so that it remembers the things that you want it to remember. It doesn't really remember that well information from one session to the next. So this is what we call fragmented context, where if you have a conversation with it on Monday and then you have another conversation with Claude, let's say on Thursday, it won't necessarily remember context of the previous conversation the way that a human would. So same thing here is a limited conversation history. This is even within the same conversation. It may not remember things that you talked about earlier that day or in that same conversation thread. Then because of all these memory challenges, you don't have this sort of long-term learning and compounding ability that will make AI a lot more powerful for you. And so you have to end up saying the same things over and over again. And we don't have a centralized knowledge base, basically where AI knows everything about your firm and everything that's going on in the firm. This is where Obsidian can come in and help us to build the knowledge base for our AI agents so that they can have persistent context about your firm, about your business, and about the things that are going on a daily basis. This is what we're looking at basically. And so we have on the left-hand side, we have a folder structure here where we have folders about the clients. We have context about the firm. We have day-by-day reports. We have department-specific information here. So we have information about accounting, billing, intake, legal, marketing, all the different departments. You can have those separated here. Then we have special resources that may be needed across the firm. And then the other valuable thing as well is you can build these skills. Skills, again, are ways that you can take your processes, standardize them, put them into a text file that you can always reference in order to run the same process the same way every single time. And the good thing about these skills is when you use a framework like the one I'm going to show you in this video, you can have skills that are grounded in correct knowledge and context about your firm. And then if I open the graph view here, this is the cool thing about Obsidian, is that it shows not only the files themselves, but it shows the connections between files. So if we had a meeting on Wednesday where we discussed strategy or the content calendar, all these connections between different things are going to show up. And this is going to be really useful when you're now working with AI because it's going to understand not only the different files and information you have, but also the way those things interact with each other. So we have this meeting Wednesday interacts with a bunch of other stuff. Claude interacts with everything. We have the overview of the firm is here. All these different pieces of information are all connecting to the other pieces of information. And that just serves to give AI a lot more context about the firm, about what's happening day to day, and just serves to ground it a lot more in real knowledge that's going to make it a lot more useful. So now let's get into what Obsidian actually looks like in a practical way when you use it with a tool like Claude Cowork. And so getting started with Obsidian is actually really straightforward. You'll just go to obsidian.md and you can download Obsidian. It's a free app that you can get. And what we're doing is we're just visualizing a folder structure here. And I'm going to walk you through now the folder structure that I would recommend for getting started. Basically, it's just a folder, a normal folder like you would have anywhere else on your computer. And what I would recommend if you're a law firm is have a folder, a client folder here with information about your different clients in it. Then also a context folder with context about the firm. So the firm, the overview of the firm, the founders, the history, the mission of the firm. The tech stack is going to be a good document to have in here as well. And then you can also have your daily summaries in here, right? And you can just start with a couple of documents. It doesn't have to be a ton of documents when you start out. Just start with a couple of documents. As you're working with Obsidian and working with Claude Cowork more, you can have Claude Cowork start to generate these daily reports for you and update this daily folder here. If you're a slightly larger firm and you have different departments, you have accounting, billing, intake, marketing, however many departments you have, you probably also want to have a folder for departments and subfolders for each department that will have any relevant files here for those departments, right? If you're asking Cowork to do something that's specific for intake, you want it to have context about what the intake department is. Then we have general resources here for the firm, things that you may want to use across the entire firm. And then skills here is also going to be valuable. Anything where you want to standardize certain processes in the firm, we're going to have those in this skills folder here. And then the last thing that I forgot to mention that's going to be really, really important for using Obsidian or using a folder structure like this is this Claude.md file. And this file is what's going to tell Claude or any other AI agent how to go about using this folder. So I just want to go over that really quickly with you. So we have this file here. It gives us a brief overview of the identity of the firm, but then it also explains the folder structure of the subfolders that we have within our main Obsidian folder. So we're letting it know that we have this context folder. This is what you can expect inside the context folder. Here's what you can expect inside the daily folder, etc., etc., etc. So that way, when Claude is using this folder, it knows where to find the different information correctly. So now if I come into Cowork, it's just like if I was working with any other project. I'll just come into this work in a project section. I will open up the Obsidian folder, and then I can ask a question like, can you summarize the meetings that we've had from Monday through Friday and note any important action items from those 5 meetings? And so we can see here, because we've told it how to use the daily folder, the first thing that it does is go and check the daily folder. And so here's how we start to really integrate Cowork into what we're doing in the firm on a daily basis, is by having this folder structure, letting Cowork know how to use the different folders. For example, the daily folder to get the meeting notes. So we can see when I told it to summarize the meetings that we've had, I didn't have to tell it to go in the daily folder because it already has that Claude.md file. It already has this file here, which tells it that the daily folder has the day-by-day operational summaries. So it knows to check the daily folder. It goes and checks that folder, reads all the meetings, tells me what happens here, and then gives me back the key action items as well. And the important thing to remember about this folder is that this is a living folder. This is basically going to be the central folder for your firm. It's going to be living and growing with your firm. So for example, if we wanted to add a new client here, a new client subfolder here, then I could just go into Claude Cowork and tell Claude that we want to add a new client to the clients folder. The client is SpaceX. Ask me any questions that you need to build a complete client folder and put it underneath the client's subfolder in this project. We can see I've asked it to create a new client for us. It looks first at the existing folder structure, the way that we do our client folder structures currently, and then starts asking me questions. So go ahead and answer this question. Who's the lead attorney? And again, it has the context about who the attorneys are because of this folder that we've given it. So let's do Cassius. What type of matter? Again, it also knows the type of matters that we do because all of that is also in the context in this folder that we're giving it. Let's do these two. Let's do hourly. There we go. Okay, and then some more questions here so it can fill out all the information that it needs. So let's give a phone number here, 67890. Email is going to be at spacex.com. How did they come in? Let's go conference, active. Let's do here, some more questions here. So I'll go through and answer these questions and then we'll come back once it's created the folder. Okay, so we answer all the questions and then it goes through and it creates the client. So if I come over to the client folder now, I have this new client underneath the client folder. So client folders here, we have all our previous clients here, and then we have SpaceX as a new client here. We have the client profile and we have information about the matter here. And it's following the same format as all the other matters that we had before, right? So this is the power of having the correct type of context in some sort of folder structure when you're interacting with tools like Claude Cowork. The other thing that I'm going to show you guys how to do is how to turn these processes into skills. So skills are basically automations you can run within Cowork, so that instead of me having to go back and forth or manually tweak things to create a new client, for example, I can just run a slash command like this, slash, and I could run a skill to create a new matter. So what I want to do here is tell Cowork to create a skill for us for, let's say, for opening a new matter. So can you take the process that we just did and create a skill for creating new matters using our specific client structure and set defaults as well? So ask me questions to figure out what the defaults should be, the default attorney, the default billing rate, the default retainer, all that information. And then we can have a skill that will just intake basic information about the client, fill the defaults, and then create the client folder for us underneath the client folder. If you are the owner of a small law firm and you need help building out AI automations for your firm or integrating tools like Claude Cowork into your day-to-day operations, there's a link you can click on in the description to see how I can help you out with that. So let's get right back into this video. And so I'll show you guys here basically what the conversation looked like. I told it basically a high level of the skill I wanted it to design. It tells me that's a great idea. And then it asked me a few questions to get the defaults right. So it asked me about the lead attorney. These are all multiple choice questions that it asked me. And the only reason it can ask me these multiple choice questions is because it has access to this folder here that has all the context about the firm, right? So it knows who the attorneys are in the firm. It knows the type of work that the firm does. All this context is helping it make better skills for us and making it easier for it to make skills for us. So it asked me these questions here about the default billing arrangement, default retainer, the default practice area, all this kind of stuff, right? It goes to ask all these questions. I had to prompt it to give me the skill in chat. So we want the skill here so we can save it so it can be available globally, basically, so that we can use it no matter what folder we're in. And so it created the skill. It gave me the skill here in the chat so I could save the skill globally. And if I look over here on the right-hand side, I see the skill here, basically creating a new client folder. The slash create client command explains why the skill exists, explains all the defaults of the firm, etc., right? And it also gives templates here. So it gives a client profile template here and also gives a matter template here. In the future, when Cowork's going to do this for us, it'll be able to reference both of these templates to create matters and to create client profiles for us. And so once we're ready to use the skill, all we do is come up here on the right-hand side and say save skill. And then we have the skill saved. So I should be able to type slash create, there we go, slash create client. And then I could create a new client with this skill. And I could just input information about John Doe with a company called Space Z or whatever. And then it would create that client for us and put it in the client folder and have all our defaults set up for it. And so creating a client is a really basic example, but you can then apply this sort of skill and also this idea of having the living folder here with all your firm's context in it. You can apply that to any sort of process you're doing in the firm, because the whole idea is we don't really want to do anything twice. If someone's done it before, it should become a skill, and Cowork should be taking on a lot of that work moving forward. The last thing I want to leave you guys with is this idea that I got from Andre Karpathy, who is, if you don't know, was one of the early members of OpenAI, head of AI at Tesla. But basically, he has this idea of the prompt to output ratio, basically where you want to do the minimal amount of prompting to get the absolute most amount of output that you can from AI. And so building out this knowledge base with something like Obsidian or just using regular folders where Cowork or Claude Code or wherever AI you're using has the context about your firm, about your business, this gives you a much better prompt to output ratio. Now you're not prompting multiple times to give it context that it should already have or tell it things it should already know. And so what we're trying to work towards is just maximizing the prompt to output ratio the entire time, where we're doing the absolute least amount of prompting and getting the most amount of output, because we've done all the in-between steps of setting up the context, giving it the different tools and skills that it needs so you can run your firm or run your business with the least amount of input necessary on your part. That's how you can use Obsidian to build a unified memory system that you can integrate with large language models like Claude. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, comment down below what other types of videos you guys want to see, and also subscribe so you don't miss any more videos like these. Thank you guys a ton for watching, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your week.